and gentlemen, welcome to this new edition of NEWSHOUND. With me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. We're going through time again today like we usually do. We're going to go back in history a bit. We're going to peruse the archives here and there. We're going to look into the article that I've written recently. It's called Musk and Epstein, the Third Culture Dossier. And it's a spicy one because finally I'm revealing a little bit about what Musk was funded by Jeffrey Epstein to do. What? He was funded. He was trained through a Jeffrey Epstein-funded course on how to manipulate the masses. Oh my God. So it's unbelievable, really, isn't it? So we're going to go through some of the information, some of the source material, some of the evidence for this in this edition of NEWSHOUND. And for those who are joining us for the first time, we are exploring everything we can about the article. Within the article itself, even though I've tried to make sure that everything's got pretty much a link or a place where you can go to find a lot more information. A lot of these articles intersected in my articles. Some of these are my work that's intersected with this article. And it's some really interesting stuff. So we'll see a bit of that as we go, and I'll explain a little bit of that because all of my articles are me going from one step to the next step and trying to work out the next step. And this one's been coming for a while. I've been meaning to write an article about Edge, which was a very special, we'll come to talk about this, a very special organization that was set up by a guy called John Brockman, and was eventually funded almost entirely by Epstein's money, by Jeffrey Epstein himself. And he would attend these courses, and it was a meeting of minds, of scientific minds, and it was an attempt to start what they called the third culture. And we'll talk about this again. This mirrors my last article I wrote, which was about the third way politics. And so this is very similar. It's actually like the same series. There's a series of thirds. What is very interesting about this third idea, the things that come in third, is that people are always looking for an alternative to everything. Alternative system to the one they can't get their head around, an alternative binary paradigm, or to the binary paradigm. You know, that's a lot of what humans do when they do crazy stuff is they try and find an alternative to a binary paradigm. They get given two options, they don't like either of them, so they go with a third way. They go with a third culture. They go with a third option. They go with a third game. There's loads of this. Happens all of the time. It's the attempt to override, or it's the result of synthesis of Hegelian dialectic all building up. So you've got a Hegelian dialectical that's been created, a paradigm. There's been a synthesis, and a new thing has to take place at the top. And of course, it's very much like the pyramid. This is what we're going to see, and this is what you're going to see now. So without further ado, I will share my screen with Yao, of course. This is something that we've always got to go through on NEWSHOUND. We're going to go into the world where I am, up in the corner now. And we are on NEWSPASTE, of course. We're on newspaste.com. I mean, if you do want me to cause trouble, I can go to NEWSPASTE proper, and that's where you can find a NEWSPASTE podcast, of course. There's a lot of pages open up. It might take a little bit of time. There's a lot of pages open up on my computer at the moment. A lot of drop-down menus there, and you can go read other articles like my Schwab articles, Epstein 101, Pottinger pieces, Younkerman pieces, Blackhand pieces, a load of other articles there. Some of these articles we will see during this adventure through time. That's one of them there. Let's go back here. But this one is the third culture. This is Musk and this is Epstein. It's the second part of the third series. And the third series is got this triangle of power in the middle of these actors. Of course, Clinton and Blair, the third way dossier, had Clinton on the one side and Blair on the other side. But I think this is very much um, very telling about human beings and their communication, the way they build their brain together and create something that synthesizes again two people binary, and it spawns something new. This is something that we investigate. So down the side of this, I got the article here that we're going to go through. And I can read you the beginning because it's Musk and Epstein, the third culture dossier, how Elon Musk was trained in psychological manipulation via a Jeffrey Epstein-funded program. Yes, he was, by Johnny Vedmore. That's me. I wrote this. That's very good for me. And as you see underneath, it says, in 2011, a small group of extremely influential people met to discuss the future of humanity. Among their ranks were Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Nathan Mervoid, Sergey Brin, and the infamous pedophile child trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. But this was not the first time these powerful and affluent technophiles had met to determine how best to control society. There we go. This is the third culture. And as always, with NewsHound, we're not going to stop there. We are going to go through. So as you see, I have noted down to start this article that I have been working on these cases for a while. This is one part of a five-part series called Epstein 101, Influence and Collusion. And this is about the relationships. This is number 4, I think. And this is Jeffrey Epstein's most powerful friend and political ally throughout the peak of his sick criminal enterprise was the 42nd president of the United States of America, William Jefferson Clinton. President Bill Clinton forged a close personal friendship with the pedophile child trafficker, which allowed Epstein a profound level of political protection. However, Epstein and Clinton's relationship wasn't built on blackmail. Rather, it was a complex fusion of influence and collusion. It's a complex fusion of influence and collusion. Here we are, yeah. So you can go and read these within the article. Some of the links will be about how some of these articles intersect, I've written before, intersect with the third culture. This is one I wrote for UK Column called David Shaw and the Rise of Jeff Bezos. This was, as you see written here, Jeff Bezos has spent decades creating a heroic backstory to the founding of Amazon. But when one investigates the truth behind the manipulated mythos, the narrative Bezos has had written into history books quickly falls apart. That is very much true. And that is D.E. Shaw, David Shaw, who was part of D.E. Shaw Hedge Fund, which was at one point owned 5 to 10% of the New York Stock Exchange, so it was an extremely wealthy company. And they created almost every big they had a profound insight to what the internet, the World Wide Web would look like. And David Shaw started creating the leaders to put into these big companies that they predicted would come out of it. So from that 1994, Jeff Bezos left D.E. Shaw and went set up Amazon. One of his partners in D.E. Shaw was Haley Miner, and Haley Miner went over and set up download.com. So there's an interesting example of some of the people who have benefited from the internet. And then, of course, a lot of this is about power and the want to control future technology. And that also come up in my piece, Dr. Klaus Schwab, or How the CFR Taught Me to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, where it was really looking at the power of predicting technology led to the creation of the World Economic Forum out of necessity after Herman Kahn that man there, predicted in 1967 out of the year 2000 most of the technologies that were going to come in the future. Kissinger was already on that. He was looking at paradigms of the future, so he was looking at the nuclear, perpetually perpetual limited warfare and mutually assured destruction, which Herman Cowan was on about as well. And so they set out to discover all the technologies they possibly could. But for a little Harvard course, of course, a little Harvard jiggery pokery always happens. And out of Harvard, something else came too, kind of out of Harvard, because a lot of people, if you were to read this article, as you see, this is the first of these third articles with Clinton and Blair, and this is the third way. This you'll discover how this is how the British and American politicians deserted their left-wing political leanings to implement a new center ground political ideology, the third way politics, which both Clinton and Blair adopted in the Democratic Party and Labour Party respectively, saw the suppression of the left and right wings and began to synthesize the two nations into singular ideological pole of far west globalism. This is a really important article. This is about how to escape the left-right paradigm. Anthony Giddens and some other socio-economic philosophers came up with the idea of the third way. And a lot of the Labour Party were studying in places like Harvard at the time. Ed Balls was at Harvard studying under Robert Reich and Larry Summers. Larry Summers being an associate of Jeffrey Epstein too, and a member of the organization we're going to look at today. And Yvette Cooper was also working on Bill Clinton's campaign, and the Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, many more, including John Prescott and others, came over, and the Miliband's were already over there, came over to America, or went over to America, and said, all right, we're going to study this new third way politics. Came back to John Smith, who was leading the Labour Party, said, we should introduce this. And he said, no bloody way I'll have any of that Clinton stuff over here. And it was all emanating out of the Harvard think tanks, as always, same as the World Economic Forum emanated from too. And so there's lots of similarities here because we'll see these same things happen again. And third way politics actually has a place within the third culture. The organization welcomed in Anthony Giddens and started to train their guys on third way politics, which allows them, they're going to be putting in those technological solutions that they want to put in and they want to create. That's what they're going to fill the gaps of policy that is no longer on the left and right. This is how technocracy begins. This also intersects with some other of my work, so we're still going through the work that intersects with this one article. That's how, for me, it's like prescient. The culmination of a load of prescient pieces, I suppose, without trying to be too over the top about it. This is from NEWSHOUND number 7. This is Elon Musk's Guide to Happiness. If you notice there, Elon Musk, and it mentions as well within this is an old zip2 .com page, which is from about 1997, and it shows on there that Elon Musk once worked for Microsoft, something that wasn't mentioned very often later until now. I brought this up, and people have been like, "Oh yeah, okay, we're gonna do." He's never denied it. He once did programming for them, but it never says. I think it was some sort of leadership program, to be perfectly honest. That's what Microsoft was doing at the time. Bill Gates had just gone through the Young Global Leaders program that was created out of Harvard programs itself. And the Young Global Leader, the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader program, when Bill Gates had just gone through it, he'd gone through it with Larry Summers, and with Tony Blair, and with Gordon Brown. They're all turning in the same circles. They're all turning in the same circles. Third way politics is being introduced by Clinton at that point, and we'll talk about that in a bit too. And this was another NEWSHOUND that I did. This is about Musk's mum and how she used her PR acumen and her skills in PR to change him from this short wearing stripy t-shirt college boy who was slightly balding already into what we see nowadays, the Baphomet we see today. And also, I did another news hound on one of the main points of this article. The behavioral insight team is here inside your mind. And this looked at the nudge units, the psychological behavioral insight units that use behavioral economics of Richard Thaler, this man here, to manipulate people and nudge people's behavior into what the state demanded. And so that's really important. As you see, all of these links are the links that are by here in this little section by here up until here, you see. Because I'm just explaining in that first section, these are the things that I've done before. So I've linked them in. So if you want to go and have a look at them, you can. Now, that person, Richard Thaler, is by here. Let's pull him back one. Richard Thaler is by here. This is on a site of edge.org. And edge.org was originally set up in 1988 by a guy called John Brockman to meet the demands of his want to build a third culture, an alternative culture that came. This edge sprang from something called the Invisible College, and we'll go into this in a little bit. And this is central. This edge is what Jeffrey Epstein funded. A load of scientists, we all know that they hung around with him. A lot of people don't know what they were doing with him. They were attending Edge, and Edge was training the elites that rule us. They were training them on how to rule us, sometimes without us knowing we're being ruled by them. And they knew what the future looked like because they had worked out the technology. So they're seeing all of these futuristic things are going to be implemented. Let's put the people in charge of the monopolies that will exist, the digital monopolies that will exist at the top, the Googles, the YouTube, the Facebook, the X, the so on and so forth, the Amazon. Let's put people right at the top, and then let's train them in how to control people through a technocracy and how to slowly eke the world into a technocracy. And Richard Thaler is good for that because he's about nudging. He's about nudging. Father of behavioral economics, recipient of the 2017 Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science, director, Center for Decision Research, University of Chicago Graduate School of Business, author of Misbehaving, and of course, Nudge. And this is his Edge page. Everybody who's involved in Edge got their own little profile page, as we'll see. Some of them have been deleted and some of them haven't. Some of them are only available on the Wayback Machine. Some are still available now and still up now. And if you go onto any of these profile pages, it'll show you, it'll give you a little rundown, but it'll also show you all the events that these people were involved with. Including down here, it shows you some more events. Masterclass. I'm going to get into that eventually. And there he is, sitting on the sofa with his mate, Daniel Kahneman. And he's going to be really important. We'll talk about him later as well. These boys are the boys who have been involved in Edge, but this is the ones who are involved in this article in particular. Like I say, this is NEWSHOUND. We go through the source detail and we view the article through the source information and through the evidence. So here we are at the beginning, really. That was a little bit of the introduction. Edge was launched in 1996 as the online version of the Reality Club and as a living document on the web to display the activities of the third culture. The Reality Club. The Reality Club was an informal gathering of intellectuals who met from 1981 to 1996. Now, a lot of things happen between 1981 and 1996 that are really important within the digital realm. So the person who set this up was a guy called John Brockman. And John Brockman was a great thinker. He wasn't like a very astute in any one particular area. He was a great thinker in all areas, but most of all, he was a fantastic interlocutor, able to marry people up and introduce people who needed to meet for the benefit of the wider scientific community. And he created something called the Reality Club in 1981. And people like Richard Dawkins and Isaac Asimov and Daniel Dennett and people like that and Steven Pinker would go together and they would meet at the Reality Club. And they would have discussions about science, but also to benefit the third culture. We'll get into that, though. We'll get into that. Um, and that's what really this article is going to be about. Now, another person who I went into recently. Recently, I wrote an article called Eric R. Weinstein's Great Replacement, showing how at the turn of the millennium, the United Nations was busily trying to encourage economic migration to the Western world. However, encouraging unfettered economic migration, as we're experiencing today, is highly unpopular with native workers of the target countries. And this was the man who was hired to write up that report. But he was also involved in Edge at one point. He said he only met Jeffrey Epstein once, but he definitely was involved in Edge. He was involved, he went to a Serpentine gallery presentation as well, where he was involved in London, which would be very interesting to find out more details on. But he said he only met Epstein once, but most people don't believe him because Epstein was almost fully funding Edge while Eric R. Weinstein was part of it. So likelihood they would have come across each other. Another person who is linked with this article is another person I've delved deep into. I was the one who revealed her activities. Nicole Youngman, the IDF linked Bond girl infiltrating the UK NHS. This is my article from 2019, where it says, originally published on Vocal Media, this heavily censored article was the first part of a trilogy investigating Nicole Youngman, examining her links with Jeffrey Epstein, Israeli intelligence, and UK NHS Health Tech Advisory Board led by UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock. And this is about how this woman got involved, but she was also linked with in a company that was linked with was run by Ehud Barak, who was a former Prime Minister of Israel, former head of the IDF, Mossad operations guy, set up a load of different first guy to name Osama bin Laden on the news after September the 11th. Big smile on his face, looking forward to it. Architect of a load of hell, really, Ehud Barak, and a very close friend to Jeffrey Epstein. And she entered into a company with this guy and Jeffrey Epstein, and Peter Thiel as well was involved in that company. So that's an extremely interesting one that is mixed in again. Now, she's also involved in with Musk in other ways now. She's actually an investor in SpaceX after selling the Swarm satellite systems to him. We'll talk about that later. Now, this is a very important part of the puzzle as well, because what I was looking for within this article is the entrance of Jeffrey Epstein into meeting Elon Musk at some point. I was looking for evidence that Musk and Bezos had met Epstein. I was looking hopefully for photographic evidence of them together, which I found. Um, I was looking for more than that. I was looking for the details about what Jeffrey Epstein was actually funding Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos to do. It's amazing. Oh, they were funded to meet scientists. No, 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 no. There's more. There's more. This will be an important article within it for one piece of information. I found that information separately from this article, but it's a really interesting one. We'll get back to it a little bit later on. Now, this again, when I said in 1967, 68, the year 2000 was written, published in 1967, and it contains nearly predictions of nearly all of the technologies that were going to come in the future. It's starts off as you see they're in the green ones are already we've already achieved. The red ones are a miss. We haven't achieved them yet, apparently. Some of them are debatable. And the pink one, the purple ones, we're already there. They're partial hit. We're already like intensive or extensive expansion of tropical agriculture and forestry. That's already halfway through development. New sources of power for ground transportation, storage, battery, fuel cells, propulsion for support. You see how Musk would have already known the future just by reading this document. You go down, the less likely true artificial intelligence, practical use of sustained fusion to produce neutrons and or energy, artificial growth of new limbs and organs. These are the things that we're trying to do now. There's one down here: practical laboratory conception and nurturing of animal human fetuses. It's very interesting, but all sorts space defense system we haven't got to yet, but it can possibly get there. Simple, inexpensive home video recording and playing we've got there, but in 1967 that wasn't simple at all. So, this document is really important. It's from Herman Cahn's year 2000. You can find it as the second link up in the second Schwab piece, Dr. Klaus Schwab, or how the CFR taught me to stop worrying and love the bomb. The second source from the bottom is this from crummy.com list of articles. Now we know, and this is where it's within the article, we know that there's four factors of control, or at least we can assume there's four factors of control if you want to be in charge of society. First of all, you need a technological paradigm shift. So you need to know the technologies, like here, and then you need to see that coming and have already worked out what benefit that would have to people. In this case, I've just mentioned megacities. And here you go. I've put in it here and put it in a link by here, so you can watch it yourself. For instance, this is from my from Bursting the Davos Bubble series. There's about 9 videos that go through the Davos training slides, the official Davos training slides that the World Economic Forum trained their own leaders in 2010, 2011, and shows you what the idea of having mega cities, what mega cities life would look like, but also lots of other things as well. I mean, it's a very interesting like bunch of slides. Is air an option? They got little fuzzy, yeah, you see it. It's really like it's very interesting to see how they're mapping out our future in detail. And when we say it, it's a conspiracy. So it's very interesting to watch that. Take care of young talents. It's like what build young global leaders like Schwab was. He was part of Kissinger's international seminar that was the original Kissinger Harvard-based Young Global Leaders program. And of course, Anthony Giddens cannot be understated in this article at all, because where you would need to know the technological paradigm shift is on its way, so you need to know the technology, have mapped it out, have looked at it. You also need a political social science that is able to deal with that new technology and incorporate it within a policy level. Technology can't be incorporated. It can only solve political issues. It can't be just solve everything. It has to be implemented in some way, and that's a social science. And Anthony Giddens created an example of this, which all of these people in this circle worship: third way. So when we'll discover about Bill Clinton when he wanted, we'll discover about it now. Within Edge, Anthony Giddens did a couple of different things. He did some lecture stuff, Anthony Giddens served as a director of London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE, from 97 to 2003. He was previously a fellow of the Professor of Sociology at King's College, Cambridge. Among his 34 books are The Third Way, The Renewal of Social Democracy, The Third Way and Its Critics, and Runaway World, How Globalization is Reshaping Our Lives. There is a substantial body of academic writing and criticism about his work. He co-founded the academic publishing house Polite Press in 1985 and was the 1999 BBC Rafe Lecturer. He was given a life peerage in June 2004 as Baron Giddens of Southgate. So Baron Giddens is a philosopher of political science, really. He's a complete and arse, and he's mapped out the type of subversive and pernicious political science that will lead us into globalization and globalism. And he's mapping us out. That's why his expertise include giving a course to Edge, which says the second globalization debate is more about globalization, and how globalism can solve things if we can only enact it properly. Well, his third way politics purges the left of a left-wing party, and it can have the same effect on the right, I suppose. Moves them center ground, and instead of having policies that you normally use on the left or right, because you're in the center now, you have to use other things like austerity and war or technology to fill the gaps that are left behind by the normal left-wing or right-wing policies that you no longer have. So that's very interesting part of what Anthony Giddens does, and he does do that. Um, and we can see here the 1992 campaign. So this is the we're going back to 1992. We're going back to the American election campaign. We're going back to Bill Clinton, and he is going to win this campaign, of course, against Bush. And he says it's instantly he's put forward straight away 1992 campaign of Democrats. New York Times, Saturday, September 26, 1992, in the New York Times machine. Clinton says he's not leaning left, but taking a new third way. Yes, he is. Um, and we can see some of this if we can zoom in now. Okay. Seeking to counter this week's Republican offensive, portraying him as a leftist, tax mad, big government liberal, Bill Clinton today began an effort to once more position himself as a third way Democrat, neither of the left or the right. At the same time, the Democratic presidential nominee sought to turn President Bush's attacks against him, depleting his opponent as a do-nothing president who is out of touch of ideas and out of time, and who clings to the stale, failed rhetoric of the past. Mr. Clinton introduced his new defense in a noontime address that was almost preachily earnest to the small crowd of invited guests at the University of Connecticut in Hartford, in West Hartford. He echoed it in a looser fashion before passionate, mostly young crowd of more than 10,000 people packed shoulder to shoulder near historic Faneuil Hall here. A can-do country. What they're talking about here and what he's introducing here is third way politics. And it was really a centrist politics that shows itself as being nothing more than illusory once you examine it while it's in office or power. Of course, the New Democrats were third way party, and New Labour ran home. Yes, they did. They ran home because in Britain, as we can see from this Economist article, the third in our series on intellectual influences of Britain's new government examines the links between the Blairites and the Clintonites, because Bowles and Brown were Harvard men. You see a lot of Harvard influence, where a lot of these decisions are made of how to manage socio-economic thinking in the future. These were Britons who were part of these different who had different relationship with the Clintonites. So for instance, here it says New Labour was not simply copying the Democrats. The transatlantic ties are both deeper and more complicated than that, and the American intellectual influence comes as much from academia as from the political world. It is based largely on personal relationships. Jonathan Powell, Mr. Blair's chief of staff, spent several years as a diplomat in the British Embassy in Washington, where he specialized in smoozing with Clintonites. David Miliband, who now runs Downing Street Policy Unit, studied at MIT, as did Jeff Morgan, another influential advisor at Number 10. And Ed Balls, the Chancellor's closest aide, spent 2 years at Harvard in the late 1980s, although then in his 20s. Mr. Balls informs one of his professors that he was already preparing to govern. The American influence on New Labour's economic policy can be traced largely through Mr. Ball's and Harvard connection. Mr. Ball's professors claim that he leaned there a commitment to he learned that there a commitment to rational activism with equal emphasis on both words. This certainly sounds preferable to irrational activism. At a time when many British academics were still focused on short-term microeconomic issues, the study of long-term economic growth was dominated by Americans. When Mr. Brown made a speech containing now infamous reference to post-neoclassical endogenous endogenous growth theory, he was drawing directly, albeit incomprehensibly, on an American academic debate about the role of government in fostering growth. The transatlantic ties were strengthened further when several of Mr. Ball's Harvard gurus joined the Clinton administration. Larry Summers went to the Treasury. Lawrence Katz, a prominent Harvard labor economist, was for a while chief economist at the Labor Department under Robert Reich, another Harvard man. The academics turned policymakers were now able to test their ideas in government. Messrs. Brown and Balls, who visited Washington regularly, listened closely. It talks about, of course, Larry Summers there, and more. Talks about Larry Summers, and Larry Summers was another Epstein associate. These were a very small group of people. This is covered again in the March of the Moderates, Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, and the rebirth of progressive politics. And the rebirth is the creation of the third way, which the third way is a trick. It's a trick. Basically, this says, as a synopsis here, Anglo-American relations, the so-called special relationship, reached a new era with the rise of New Labour and the New Democrats in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Richard Carr reveals the untold story of the transatlantic third way by analyzing how Tony Blair and Bill Clinton won power and ultimately how they lost it. Using newly unearthed archives and interviews with key players, he investigates the relationship between the administrations and sheds new light on big events such as Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland, the handover to George W. Bush, and the controversial Iraq War. Iraq War and the austerity that came with, of course, are part of third way politics. It's hard to get rid of the third way politics. Now, very interesting. Here we go. This is in Fabian Society magazine. So we're in the web archives. The reason why it's got this bit on the top, of course, we're in archive.org. So these are snapshots of the websites from the past. And we're in the Fabian Society here. We're only back in 2020 in an article called Sweet Moderation. Tony Blair and Bill Clinton walked the third way in politics together. Their records should be defended, argued Richard Carr. Yes, he would argue that, wouldn't he? Very interesting. The type of people who were involved in the Clinton campaign is what I want to show you. And these people were all turning in the same circles. In November 1992, Bill Clinton, backed by New Labour's Yvette Cooper, who survived on a diet of baked potatoes, sweet corn, and bananas when researching health and crime policy for the Democrats, and Philip Gould, advising on media strategy, finally proved that progressive could win again. Within weeks, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were in New York and Washington, probing New Democrats like Al Fromm and Sidney Blumenthal, Sidney Blumenthal being Max Blumenthal of the Grey Zone's father, on the late DLC and PPI think tank pamphlets. Though impressed by Brown's detailed grasp of American politics, Blair appeared Clinton pollster Stan Greenberg like a Bill Clinton without all the complexity. Their leader, John Smith, was less impressed, telling Peter Mandelson that we don't need any of that fucking Clinton stuff over here. But he was too late. Blair and Brown had fully bought in to third way politics. That's who they bought in. And of course, Smith soon died afterwards, didn't he? Yes, heart attack. Oh, how unfortunate. Now, of course, I'm talking about political science here. And the New Labour elite were being trained over there too, of course. And you don't know what type of, whether it be third way politics that are being incorporated, or maybe it be Klaus Schwab's stakeholder capitalism, which he created, that will be the brand that eventually wins out or is instituted or switched between, to understand more. But for that, you'll need a load of young global leaders. Now, I go back to NEWSPASTE here. This is from an article, the third in the Schwab series, called The Kissinger Continuum, the Unauthorized History of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader Program. And this is where the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders Program, Klaus Schwab's supposed brainchild, is actually an almost exact replica of Henry Kissinger's international seminar that was originally run out of Harvard and was funded by the CIA. In this article, Johnny Vedmore investigates the people behind Kissinger's international seminar, the CIA conduits which funded the program, and Kissinger's key role in the creation of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader program itself. An article I'm very proud of course. I mean, some of these articles are enormous. And there you go. This is 1993 World Economic Forum. The Global Leaders for Tomorrow program was run the first time in 1993, and the first people who were involved in it, it was an insane list of characters, of course, but they're the same people who you can imagine. And later on, it was reformed as the Young Global Leaders in 2004, and that was Klaus Schwab being given a $1 million prize by the Dan David Foundation, while Kissinger was on the board of the Dan David Foundation. So kind of like, that's why I called it Kissinger Continuum. It goes round in a circle. The well-known leaders who attended the first ever one included Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, but also Angela Merkel, Viktor Orban, Nicolas Sarkozy, Guy Verhofstadt, Lee Hsien Loong, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Jose Maria Aznar, alongside, of course, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Larry Summers, and Edgar Bronfman. Edgar Bronfman. Where do you know him from? Oh, what, is he an Epstein associate? Yes, he is. Bronfman family all over it. Larry Summers, where do you know him from? Oh, Epstein associate in Clinton's administration. Richard Branson, rumors. Bill Gates, we know he was hanging around with Epstein. He was an Epstein associate too, head of Microsoft. Of course, these guys are all in bed together. And you may have, to control society, you may have found your technological paradigm shift. You may then get your political science together with something like third way politics. But then you'll need to create your leadership group, your young global leaders who will take up the mantle of either Klaus Schwab's stakeholder capitalism, Andy Giddens' third way politics, or one of the many other types of political solutions that are around. And it's not only the young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Here, this is the convocation of the German Marshall Fund with Willy Brandt, the old German chancellor, up there. And this is from one of my articles called Guido Goldman and the CFR and the German Marshall Fund, fourth in the Schwab series. And it looks at as Kissinger's international seminar was revealed to be a CIA-funded program, the elites of the Council on Foreign Relations hatched a plan to create a new organization to train young global leaders. The Harvard-based German Marshall Fund was created by a CIA-linked Kissinger protege named Guido Goldman. Their goal, the total capitulation of Russia. In actual fact, Guido Goldman, who helped, who managed the German Marshall Fund, was Henry Kissinger's best friend. He organized Henry Kissinger's birthday parties and everything. And Kissinger's mum was, yes, Kissinger's mother. It's not, that's not a euphemism, by the way. Kissinger's mother was the housemaid, the kosher maid, in actual fact. Nahum Goldman's house. Nahum Goldman was Guido Goldman's father and was one of the Zionist founders of Israel and heads of the World Zionist Congress as well, etc., etc. So, back to Jeffrey Epstein buying into the Edge Foundation. And here is John Brockman. And this BuzzFeed news article will, I love it. Look at this mainstream trash. Epstein, who killed himself in federal custody in August. No one, no one believes he killed himself. Come on, not even the mainstream media could believe it, but BuzzFeed News can. Oh, it'll give you some of the information, but then it'll give you the official narrative too and tell you that it's so. It's so nonsense. And of course, what Epstein was doing was getting involved in Edge. And what was Edge? Well, we can go here, we go back in time to the Invisible College here. This book is one of those rare attempts to unveil the spirit and variety of meaning Rosicrucianism came to possess amongst the 17th century audience, and importantly, how and why it was able go on. It was able to have such meaning read into it. There is much food for thought here. An original title was called The Invisible College, a study of the three original Rosicrucian texts by Stanley Bieler. And The Invisible College, as mentioned here, it came up in Rosicrucian text, in a Rosicrucian pamphlet, in actual fact, in the 1600s, and was a way for intellectuals to meet up and discuss things that might not be understood by others in many different ways, might not be understood and might not be accepted and might not be appreciated as well. And these colleges, this was about intellectual communication, and this was the 17th century. This was one of the first modern forms of this. And we see there's more evidence of this, of course. We can see this is a Cambridge University pamphlet as well, the extract. But the title is New Light on the Invisible College, the Social Relations of English Science in the Mid-17th Century. So back then, in the time when it was around the time of the Civil War in the UK, in England, the English Civil War, there was this new burgeoning sort of society, Invisible College, like held in secret to an extent through fear. A little bit of fear was being created. Now, it wasn't the only thing either. We on the article here, we're in the section called intellectual divide. You see, these are the sources still. that we're looking, and we're at the Republic of Letters, because the Republic of Letters was another way in the 17th, in the 18th century. They said, okay, and late 17th century. Like I said, we need these scientists to communicate with each other, these intellectuals. And intellectual communication can benefit us a lot. And so we need to do it en masse at scale. And we need to make sure that the scope is wide and encompasses the most intellectual of types. And so this is at Stanford University. This is a very interesting document. They'll give you a bit of a rundown of the Republic of Letters, and then we'll give you some. There's like projects here which have gone into some of the communications that were being had between intellectuals of that period. And a lot of this is about intellectual conversations. Now, this here is an article I wrote called The Welcome Five. Is Roy Anderson, Jeremy Farrar, Neil Ferguson, Edward C. Holmes, and Richard Sykes. They were the Welcome Five. This was during COVID, of course. And in a section at the end of this is about the Royal Society, because these different organizations, such as the Invisible College and the Republic of Letters, gave rise to powerful organizations such as the Royal Society. And during this period, you can tell that the Royal Society was extremely involved. You can see the top people, some of the top scientists who were involved in the recent debacle was Sir Roy Anderson, FRS, Sir Richard Sykes, FRS, Jeremy Farrar, FRS, yes, Fellow of the Royal Society. And the Royal Society was a very powerful organization. And guess who is a member of the Royal Society? Can you possibly guess who might be a member of the Royal Society? Yes, Elon Musk, of course, is a member of the Royal Society too. As you can see here, the Royal Society has thousands of members made up of some of the most famous figures of the scientific elite, including individuals like David Attenborough and Elon Musk, as well as historic members such as Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. So these organizations are organizations that all the intellectuals are involved in, and it keeps them together. Yes, love will tear them apart. So this is where we get to an example. This is an Edge masterclass here. We're in one of the Edge masterclasses. So the Invisible College and the like gave rise to organizations such as that eventually evolved, such as the Reality Club, which then evolved into Edge and merged itself into Edge. Here we're on a screenshot of this Edge page about a 2008 class. And this is what we're really going to be discussing more about later. It's a class 2008, Richard Thaler, Senthil Mullainathan, Daniel Kahneman, a short course in behavioral economics. And we'll get on to that in just no time whatsoever. Now, here in the art section of the FAZ, that's I can't remember how to say it. It's a German newspaper. I think I've got this on translation. Is it a German newspaper? Well, anyway, this is a portrait of John Brockman, the world mind that came in from the counterculture. Now, Brockman's extremely important to understand because his story is all about Brockman. Brockman saw the potential of creating a new Invisible College, a new Republic of Letters for the 80s and 90s. And 81 to 96, like I said earlier, these were busy times in computer science, especially Usenet was created and founded and put into action in about 81, 82. And that meant that intellectuals at different colleges had the ability to communicate over an intranet, an internal internet called Usenet that was a precursor to the World Wide Web. And everybody used their own names for it and communicated across borders, just like happened in the Republic of Letters or with the Invisible College. And this meant that people could see, okay, this is a time now to take the next step and plan for the next step. And this is what he would do. He was a counterculture interlocutor for scientists, John Brockman. That's what he was. Um, be imaginative, exciting, compelling, inspiring. That's what John Brockman expected of himself and others, arguably the planet's most important literary agent. Brockman brings his cyber elite together in his internet salon, Edge. We paid a visit to the man from the third culture. The internet had yet to be born, but the talk still revolved around it. In New York, it was half a century ago. Cage, as John Brockman recalls, always spoke about the mind we all share. That wasn't some kind of holistic nonsense. He was talking about the profound cybernetic ideas. He got to hear about them on one of the occasions when John Cage, a music revolutionary, Zen master, and mushroom collector, cooked mushroom dishes for him and a few friends. At some point, Cage packed him off home with a book. "That's for you," were his parting words, after which he never exchanged another word with Brockman, something that he couldn't understand for a long time. "John, that's Zen," a friend finally explained to him. "You no longer needed him." Norbert Wiener was the name of the author. Cybernetics, or Control and Communication in The Animal and the Machine, the name of the book. Page by page, Brockman battled his way through the academic text together with Stuart Brand, his friend, who was about to publish the whole Earth catalogue, the shopping primer and Bible of the environmentally driven counterculture. For both readers, physics and mathematics expanded into the infinite space that no longer distinguished between the natural and human sciences, mind and matter, searching and finding. Like the idea of the internet, which was slowly acquiring contours during these rambling 1960s discussions, the idea of Edge, the internet salon around which Brockman's life now revolves, was also taking shape. Edge is the meeting place for the cyber elite, the most illustrious minds who are shaping the emergence of the latest developments in the natural and social sciences, whether they be digital, genetic, psychological, cosmological, or neurological. Digerati from the computer universe of Silicon Valley aren't alone in giving voice to their ideas in Brockman's salon. They are joined in equal measures by other eminent experts, including the evolutionary biologists Richard Dawkins and Steven Pinker, and the philosopher Daniel Dennett, the cosmologist Martin Rees, the biological anthropologist Helen Fisher, the economist, psychologist, and Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman, the quantum physicist David Deutsch, the computer scientist Marvin Minsky, and the social theorist Anthony Giddens, ranging from the co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak, to the decoder of genomes, Craig Venter. His guest list is almost unparalleled, even in the boundless realm of the internet. Even the actor Alan Alda and writer Ian McEwan can be found at his forum. The Bridge of the Third Culture. The question is sent out to all Salon members at the start of every year. This year it is, what scientific idea ready to be retired? What scientific idea is ready to be retired? They've obviously made a mistake. The editorial marching orders written by Brockman reveal the heart of Edge. Go deeper than the news. Tell me something. I don't know. You are writing for your fellow Edgies, a sophisticated bunch, and not the general public. Stick to ideas, theories, systems of thought, disciplines, not people. Come up with something new. Be exciting, inspiring, compelling. Tell us great stories. Amaze, delight, surprise us. Ay, 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 ay. I'm just gonna see if I can actually get onto the next page there. Not sure if I can. As you see, we're talking about the third culture here. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a scientific revolution. Right? We'll leave that one behind because we'll explain it somewhere else. Because John Brockman in 1995 had written the third culture beyond the scientific revolution. And for the book for this, 35 years ago, C.P. Snow in a now famous essay, wrote about the polarization of the two cultures, literary intellectuals on the one hand and the scientists on the other. Although he hopes for the emergence of a third culture that would bridge the gap, it is only recently that science has changed the intellectual landscape. Brockman's thesis that science is emerging as the intellectual center of our society is brought into life vividly in the third culture, which weaves together the voices of some of today's most influential scientific figures. So, along with all these different scientific figures he had connections with, he basically posited that two cultures that C.P. Snow talked about. There was the third culture, the interlocutor between the two is technology and science itself. Now, again, here on Edge site, it explains his dinner with Cage in 1965 that we've gone through, and talks about Brockman's life in many ways, different people that he knew. I mean, he was a guy about town in New York. Everybody knew Brockman. And here we have Edge Serpentine Information Gardens or this is also mentioned on Edge, and this is showing that on in 2011 Edge at the Obrist invitation participated in Serpentine Gallery Garden Marathon. This was one of the events that Eric R. Weinstein was at, the Serpentine event in a Serpentine event in London. That was the same sort of thing, and is worth noting. Eric R. Weinstein, that's one of the events that he went to. And this is Obrist, the curator of the Serpentine Gallery in London, Kensington Garden, another one of the art of conversation, of course, which is very much like what Brockman was doing. So here we go. This is Cybernetics. This is the book that was given the Norbert Wiener, what a name. Norbert Wiener. Yes, sir. That's a terrible name. Get out of my class. Cybernetics, or control and communication in the animal and the machine. Control and communication. That's really what Edge is all about, control and communication. Very interesting that this is the book that Gage gave him that sent him into this. Well, this started what he described as the cybernetic question, um, the cybernetic idea, as he said. Um, and extremely interesting to study some of this because it'll teach you a lot about what motivates minds like these. Maybe you don't trust them the most, or what not. What scientific? Right, I lost one of those articles there. This page cannot be displayed. Let me see if I can sort that out. Right, pressing a button here and there. We'll see now. Yeah, so this is from The Guardian. And this is an Observer article saying, what scientific idea is ready for retirement? Each year, a forum of the world's most brilliant minds asks one question. And so this is the Reality Club, launched in 1996, the online version of the Reality Club, an informal gathering of intellectuals who met from 81 to 96 in Chinese restaurants, artists, lost investment banking firms. That's very interesting that they say investment banking firms, because you'd assume that it's JP Morgan and that was somehow related with Epstein as well. Um, this is a very interesting like article in itself because it'll give you little bits of information. When Edge, when the Reality Club had been fully launched online, Edge found its own place. The online world, I don't think they knew what was going to happen. It kind of ran alongside. He created Edge in 1988, getting on to the bandwagon of the internet as early as possible. And then the Reality Club eventually merged into Edge.org. And as you see, Edge.org, the first ever Edge.org meeting, official one that was noted down as well, Edge 1, was December the 21st, 1996, and it was a speech by Richard Dawkins, The Third Culture, Science, Delusion, and the Appetite for Wonder, with responses to this from Murray Gell-Mann, Milford Wolpoff, Ruben Hirsch, Carl Sabag, Duncan Steele, blah de blah de blah de blah de blah de blah de blah, Robert Shapiro, and others. And then spare me your memes by the very large Jaron Lanier. Uh, he debates a couple other people. This was um, the talk of instantly from the off. They were interested in propagating the idea of the third culture. And Tech Monitor produced this, a Digerati conversation with the Cyber Elite, originally on 1997, and says Claire Haney of our sister publication, Software Futures, reviews a book of interviews with some of the computers industry's leading lights. John Brockman is a New York-based literature agent with an interest in scientific and contacts to go with it. In between clients, he's written quite a few of his own books. In The Third Culture, Beyond the Scientific Revolution, for instance, a kind of answer to C.P. Snow's famous 1950s essay, The Two Cultures, Brockman sought the opinion of such scientific luminaries as Marvin Minsky, etc., etc., etc. The book is, and this is talking about the third culture. The book is high on style, and delights in the idiosyncratic layout and chapter headings. For example, all the computer industry luminaries interviewed are given their own titles. So Microsoft Corp's Bill Gates is labeled the software developer, and Sun Microsystems includes Scott McNealy as the competitor, while internet rights activist and co-founder of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, John Perry Barlow, is derogatorily known as the Coyote. So you can see those are some of the big names who appeared in The Third Culture and some other work, because John Brockman had produced a lot of work by the time he got there. As once said by Brockman, which is, I think, within this, is this, yeah, this is within this. Let's see if we can find it actually on here. Because he is the interlocutor, he is the connector. This is what John Brockman does very well. And it's very interesting. I can't find the quote within it, but it is here somewhere. John Brockman, and this is a quote by Howard Rheingold. Might have been easier to look for Rheingold within this very small writing, but Howard Rheingold, an American writer and teacher who specializes in cultural, social, and political implications of modern communication media, once said of Brockman, Brockman has an uncanny way of knowing people who know something important and a talent for putting people together. He was a definite interlocutor for sure. There you go. And um, this is something. This is something that is really comes out about John Brockman. He, from the very first, he was a brilliant interlocutor. From the very first moments of Edge, he knew how to bring people together. He had already done it so many times. And the third culture, of course, here we go. Third culture consists of those scientists and other thinkers in the empirical world who, through their work and expository writing, are taking the place of the traditional intellectual in rendering visible the deeper meaning of our lives, redefining who and what we are. It is large enough umbrella to also include the Gujarati, the doors, the thinkers, and the writers connected in a way that may not even they may not even appreciate, who have tremendous influence on the emerging communication revolutions surrounding the growth of the internet and the web. Of course, we're going to get to this now. And this is the original. This is C.P. Snow, The Two Cultures, 60 Years Later, that you can find on Cambridge Universities. And this article considers the modern day relevance of C.P. Snow's Two Culture. It's very interesting, the two cultures that are put forward by C.P. Snow. And this is his book you can find on Internet Archive. He says that basically there's a culture of intellectuals within the humanities and a culture of intellectuals within the formal sciences, so physics, biologists, chemistry, etc. And that these intellectuals, these two sets of intellectuals, can't understand each other. For instance, the scientists, the formal scientists, wouldn't understand the works of Shakespeare, and those from the humanities and philosophy and etc. They don't understand the second law of thermodynamics, so they are both unable to communicate about such things and get hostile when you suggest that understanding of them both and learning how to combine them could be a third culture on top, and that their two intellectual cultures are actually distinct and separate. That's what a lot of people say. That's the quote. I've described that just then, but that's Snow's well-quoted work about him getting annoyed by the fact that people were unable to understand what was really happening between, or communicate, social scientists to scientists or science to social scientists. And this was an attempt here at Edge. This is one of the meetings here that was happening, an early one. I think these are probably, this is originally, even though it says like, you know, the snapshot taken in 2022, this is I think from a 2003 Edge meeting, or 2002, might be an earlier one. As you can see, these are a lot of scientists, a lot of the big scientists around. It'll be hard to say. I think that's probably Sergey Brin over there. There'll be a few others too that you may recognize. John Brockman is here. That's John Brockman there. And there's Jeffrey Epstein, of course, sitting down having a conversation with whoever he's facing at the time. And this is what Edge did, you know. Here's an article in Inside Higher Education from 2019, July 16th. Says Pinker Epstein soldier spy. See, Tinker Tailor soldier spy. Stephen Pinker's aide in Jeffrey Epstein's legal defense renews criticism of an increasingly divisive public intellectual. And this shows Lawrence Krauss up here and Steven Pinker down here with Jeffrey Epstein at an Edge event. And they're having a great old time. And it says here, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein had help in avoiding federal or state prison is unsurprising. Money and power often buys what they shouldn't. But the recent revelation that Epstein found aid from star psychologist Steven Pinker in the form of a 2007 legal document surprised both Pinker's fans and critics. At least at first, then came the analysis to supporters of Pinker's Johnston's family professor of psychology at Harvard University. His ties to Epstein are an aberration in an otherwise commendable life as a public intellectual, one based on reason and truth. Even when that's unpopular, increasingly Pinker's work centers on the notion that life is good, better than it's ever been, and that we don't appreciate it enough. And this goes through Pinker and Epstein's relationship and how it went past just being scientific. It became to a point where, of course, this was a relationship between the two. It was a friendship, and Pinker would even protect him at the worst of times. And there's not only Pinker who would get roundly criticized in the media, as I say, for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, especially after Jeffrey Epstein's first conviction. But here we can see in the New York Times, long before divorce, Bill Gates had a reputation for questionable behavior. Oh, really? And then they just rally round him during what happened recently. Melinda French Gates voiced concerns about her husband's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and a harassment claim against his money manager. He also had an affair with an employee. Oh, yes, there you go. Spokesman for Bill Gates said claims that he mistreated employees were false, but he would do them behind his wife's back. By the time Melinda French Gates decided to end her 27-year marriage, her husband was known globally as a software pioneer, billionaire, and a leading philanthropist. But in some circles, Bill Gates has also developed a reputation for questionable conduct in work-related settings. Yes, very interesting here. Look, it's got these Chinese characters in New York Times. For some reason, they're bringing in the Chinese, trying to bring in Chinese search engines. Interesting. Now, understanding why Bill Gates was involved and why Steven Pinker hung around with him, why Dawkins was involved, why Dennett was involved, why Minsky was involved, why Summers was involved, why all these guys were involved. You have to understand Edge was right at the peak. These aren't small people who were involved in Edge. If you were a scientist, um, and you were applying your trade to the highest level, especially if you were in cybernetics, computing, anything like that, then you had a place on Edge's website, you had a place on Edge's courses, you had a place in the Billionaires dinner, and you had a lot of other places. Here are some of the people who were involved in the course we're going to look at that Elon Musk was involved in. One of them, or one of the people who were involved in these courses was Salah Kamanga, who at the time was Google former CEO, YouTube, founding member, Google's product team. So this is now he's a former CEO of YouTube, but when it was happening, he was the CEO of YouTube. So while he's involved with this, he's the head of the biggest media platform in the world. Goes on and was Google as well, and goes on to be a founding member of Google's product team. Salah Kamanga, Google's ninth employee, is the former CEO of YouTube. He led the team that defined and launched Google's AdWords, and he is former vice president Google's web application, including Gmail, Talk, Calendar, Reader, blah de blah de blah de blah. So he's a Google bigwig. And these are some of the people who, of course, come up in this article. They are the people who were some of the biggest people at the time. Evan Williams, software engineer who co-founded several internet companies, including Blogger, which he ran for 4 years before selling to Google, and in 2003, Twitter, where he was chairman and CEO and now serves on Twitter's board of directors. So Evan Williams is one of these guys who was one of the Twitter guys involved with Elon Musk, Kamanga, and all of the rest of them in Edge, of course. Here's Elon Musk's Edge page. We're looking at 2012. We're looking at a fairly early snapshot of his Edge page, where you can see at this point he's at SpaceX and Tesla Motors, and Solar City is his official ones. And you can see the events he was involved in here. He was involved, of course, in the Edge Masterclass 2008 with Richard Thaler and the Edge Masterclass 2009 with George Church. It doesn't show yet. In 2012, even though it's a year afterwards, it does not show that he was at the 2011 Billionaires dinner. It doesn't show that at all. But if we go forward in time on the web archive and look for a later snapshot of Elon Musk, we should be able to see. There you go. It's taking a while for this snapshot to come up, but I have got a lot of windows open, of course. Oh, looks like we're not going to make it today. Let's, might actually might just go to his current page, and it still doesn't show that he was involved in 2011. That's very interesting, isn't it? Because it does for everybody else, it'll show you. For everybody else, it'll show you all the different things they're involved in. And if you go to the Edge dinners here and you go to 2011, you see Elon Musk straight away. There you go. There's his smiling face. Dinner party was a microcosm of the newly dominant sector of American business, said Gary Wolf. And there you go. There's some of the people. We'll go back into that. Some other people who were involved, of course, who were implicated and who got involved in a lot of these things, including the course that Elon Musk was attending, which is the masterclass by Richard Thaler, the head of behavioral economics and the nudge units. The psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, and the other psychologist, Endil Mutnafan, is Sean Parker. He was a co-founder of Napster, founding president of Facebook, founder of the Parker Foundation, also involved in Thiel's Founders Fund as well, which he doesn't say in that, but it is. Also involved was Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon, owner of Washington Post, founder of Blue Origin. There you go. You could see how many different things that he was involved in there. Uh, Jeff Bezos was a regular attendee at Ed. He was one of the main guys. He was one of Brockman's go-to guys. And of course, we know that David Shaw, from this article that I wrote, David Shaw and the Rise of Jeff Bezos, that he was put into his position at Amazon really by after being vice president of D.E. Shaw during this period. But that's one of the ways he could have known Jeffrey Epstein already. Either he's hanging around with D.E. Shaw, he's already involved in creating big companies. He's also hanging around in other places at the time. We know that D.E. Shaw, while Jeff Bezos was working for him, was also a Clinton advisor going into the White House. And we know that Epstein visited the White House at least 17 times in the first 2 years, where Mark Middleton got found hanging from a tree with a gunshot wound to the chest. It called suicide. What a load of wank. And this is a lot like the intelligence world taking over politics really openly. But this is like the intelligence firms getting really involved because these guys are all intelligence here. And so we know that from that Epstein was in and out of the White House. We also know that Bezos could have met Epstein via Sotheby's, because at the time that Amazon entering into this deal, when just as in 1999, Bezos is always already attending Edge here. And in 1999, he's the in front cover of Time magazine, and he's seen as one of the world's richest tech pioneers, tech billionaires. And so he enters into a deal with Sotheby's, and on the board of Sotheby's was, of course, Les Wexner, who was one of Jeffrey Epstein's biggest funder, if not biggest, but that's partially, I think it was a conduit for sending money that looked like it come from abroad when it actually come from the CIA. So I'm not sure about what Les Wexner's real role was. People like to say he was a Jew, so ergo he was Mossad, but I think he was a Jew, and Jewish ethnicity was really useful for the CIA so that they could look like it was the money was coming from someone else when they were doing operations on American soil like they weren't allowed to. But Bezos, for instance, was one of the ones who was involved in Sotheby's. Um, Taubman, Taubman was also the top guy at Sotheby's during this period, and he's one of the mega group alongside Les Wexner. Um, And there you go. That's the actual article inside the New York Times. It shows the head. She gets in loads of trouble for their interactions with Jeffrey Epstein. Eventually, it gets very hard for her to stay around. Um, she gets in trouble. I can't remember what she gets in trouble for, and she eventually gets brought down. It might not all be Epstein related, but I've got a feeling it is. I think in about 2004, 2005, she's one of the ones who's cut. Tiffany Dubin is also, is it Tiffany Dubin? She's also on the Lolita Express flight logs quite a lot, and she's head of fashion at Sotheby's during this period. So they're all intertwined. And Ghislaine Maxwell is well known for looking for gallerinas, what she called gallerinas, in these young girls who worked in the arts, who were quite educated and would be able to be sold off to people who were interested. Is Jeff Bezos again. And we can see that Bill Gates has his own page on Edge. We can see where he was involved in. He was involved in a Edge Billionaires dinner here. Involved in the Jared Diamond Award, Pulitzer Prize for General Nonfiction. That's a contribution in a conversation. And he was involved in a talk for the curator, of course, as part of the third culture stuff. Another one of the guys who were involved in all of this was Sergey Brin, co-founder and director for special projects at Google. A native of Moscow, he received a Bachelor of Science degree with honors in mathematics, computer science from the University of Maryland at College Park. He is currently on leave from the PhD program in computer science at Stanford University, where he received a master's degree. Sergey, Sergey is a recipient of the National Science Foundation Graduate Fellowship, as well as honorary MBA from Instituto de Empresa. It was at Stanford where he met Larry Page and worked on a project that became Google. Larry Page, also an Edge member. Nathan Myhrvold is a really important one, CEO and managing director of Intellectual Ventures. They hold something like 7,000 patents and patent pendings, which accused of patent theft as well, quite a lot. And he was really, most of the pictures you see from the Edge organization, dinners and events, are Nathan Myhrvold who are taking the pictures. He goes around with a camera and takes pictures of everyone. He had a very important part in Edge, extremely important part. Now, Larry Page, also at Edge, is doing that. He was, of course, co-founder of Google with Sergey Brin. So these guys are the top level. This isn't messing around, and we can see this is the Edge Science Dinner from 2003. You can see the pictures in there. You can see Sergey Brin's down here, Jeff Bezos on the other side. So. There's Sergey Brin, there's Jeff Bezos, and there's Rona Tannenbaum and Alexa McKenzie. Alexa McKenzie, she's going to become Jeff Bezos's wife, I believe, isn't it? This is Katinka Matson, who was one of the main people working at Edge. She was Brockman, friends with Brockman for a long time. Freeman Dyson, of course, and Jared Diamond. Dennett and Pinker there. Minsky and Bates. You've got the Pullman of the New York Times and Rodney Brooks. Rodney Brooks, I think, wasn't Rodney Brooks New York Times? We'll find out soon. Katie Hafner of New York Times, George Dyson. Um, you can see these are big players in the world of science. Lee Smolins there with Pat Hillis, who's Danny Hillis's wife, methinks. These are really, like I say, relatively powerful people. Stuart Brand, important in at least making these things happen. And here you got Eric Schmidt, of course, of Google, who's another one who's extremely important in the Google world. Jaron Lanier is well known around the place, and he's there with Jeff Bezos there. You can see that these are the guys. This is what happens at Edge. They all get together. Nathan Myhrvold takes pictures of them all, and soon you've got the very pretty young Banu next to Brockman. You can suppose Banu may have come with someone like Jeffrey Epstein, maybe, but that's just a thought. And there you go, Marnie Morris and Jeff Bezos, Sergey Brin with Brockman. Um, these are the boys. These are the science boys. They're getting away with it all. And there you go. That last one there was Eric Schmidt again. Big boys, big players going to these dinners. Some of the other ones who had their own pages, Anne Wojcicki, who's of 23andMe. That's a pretty important one. And we'll go by Elon Musk again. Now, Elon Musk was the star of the show. In the course that he was on, that was at Edge, he was the star of the show. They wanted him badly. This here is a very infamous shot of Elon Musk being photobombed apparently at a party. It's very clever. Ghislaine Maxwell used to do that all the time, photobomb, very famous person, people. Apparently here, she asks Elon Musk how to destroy the internet. She's like, how do we destroy, if we wanted to destroy the internet, how do we destroy it? So they're already looking to destroy. They want Elon Musk for a number of reasons. One of them is for advice on how to do things that are Machiavellian. But again, this could very well just be Elon Musk is at a party, she's at a party, and then she just turns up and someone takes a picture of them. That happens a lot in Ghislaine Maxwell's world. And again, Ghislaine Maxwell reportedly asked Elon Musk to destroy the internet. That's one of the times said for that. And then we get back to the BuzzFeed news leaks. In 2011, Jeffrey Epstein, oh, leaks. In 2011, Jeffrey Epstein was a known sex offender. He had been convicted in 2009, served with an open door in a plea deal, and he got away with a load, opened up a not-for-profit, and just continued doing his work while in prison. As known sex offender, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Sergey Brin dined with him anyway. Now, here we go, nuts and bolts. This isn't Elon Musk's first time that he's going to be going to a Jeffrey Epstein-funded event. This is like the lesser bit of it. This is him at an event where Jeffrey Epstein is as well, at a billionaires dinner. And this is the most likely place. I was looking for a sign that I would be able to find Elon Musk in the same room as Jeffrey Epstein, and preferably a photo. And I did. I did. Now, it had already been found. The photo had already been found. Here it is. This is from the Edge dinner from 2011. And there you see, just by here, Jeffrey Epstein having a conversation with someone on the same um, table as Zach Brogue. And so we know that Elon Musk attended that dinner as well. We know that. We do know that. That's the picture. But this is the picture that I've produced extra so you can see in actual fact Elon Musk is in the same photo. This is Elon Musk here. This is him at the event in that jacket with that shirt on, with that haircut, on the same table that you can see in the corner of the room, the same back of the room there. And he is 5 meters, maybe even not even 5 meters, 2.5 meters, 3 meters away from Jeffrey Epstein. They're in the same room. There's only 25 people in this room, all big scientists. They've been trying to get Elon Musk for a while, and Jeffrey Epstein manages it eventually. He gets in the room. In this event, there's Zachary Bogue. In this event, there were more than just him. There's you can't see her there, but that's Tallulah Musk. That's Elon Musk's wife at the time was there. So here we go again. So there's Tallulah Musk there. And we can see that also Max Brockman was at the event. Now, Max Brockman, CEO of Brockman Inc., is international literary agency. Of course, he's his father's son in many respects. So that we know that what he does, he goes on and does the same thing. And this is the Edge dinner in total. So this is the dinner that Elon Musk was at. We can see some of the other people who were there. Sergey Brin is a big time guy. Is the picture you see that I showed you shows that Tesla and SpaceX is from. David Brooks, that's him, of the New York Times. So the New York Times reporters there. It's a very establishing thing to be there, isn't it? Lucy Page Southworth. Lucy Page, I think, is probably Larry Page's missus. Sergey Brin. Some of the people here you know less than others. Like me, do you know Marissa Mayer? Probably not. 23andMe and Wojcicki. Microsoft is represented there. These are all of the biggest people, Applied Minds, Google. These are all of the biggest people in the biggest tech firms, apart from Peter Gabriel. But Peter Gabriel has always had an interest in technology, especially film, computer tech, animation tech, etc. Jeff Bezos, who always looks completely crazy, is there. Salah Kamanga, who's there on behalf of YouTube at that point, like I say. So these are the heads of all of the big social media platforms. John Brockman himself and his son Max Brockman. Nathan Myhrvold is there too. You can see Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk in the background on the same table. Sergey Brin, David Brooks having a conversation. Salah Kamanga again. You see these guys are pretty much the top guys. Jeffrey Epstein, Elon Musk, Zach Bogue. Here is John Brockman and Jeff Bezos together, buddy, and Tallulah Musk. She married Musk the year before, divorces him a year after. Grandfather of the iPod, Tony Faddle, grandfather of the iPod. That's a really strange one. There you go. Look, oh, I'm having such a great time. I thought I'd just include Adel Monpiar in the manufacturing of trust because I talk about wealthy and clever PR firm, major PR companies, and I thought it's worth putting an article I wrote about the most major PR firm in the world that stands behind Klaus Schwab, and the World Economic Forum runs the Edelman Trust Barometer every year. An important article which you can go read, linked in through this, of course. But one of the main guys who we want to be talking about, we get into Elon Musk's training in psychological manipulation funded by Epstein. And of course, that means we got to be introduced to the father of behavioral economics. And the father of behavioral economics is Richard Thaler, director, as we said earlier, director, Center for Decision Making Research, of course, University of Chicago graduate. And his buddy in arms, his mate, is Cassar Sunstein. They wrote Nudge together. Cassar Sunstein is currently the Robert Walmsley University professor at Harvard from 2009 to 2012. He was administrator of the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. He is the founder and director of program of behavioral economics and public policy at Harvard Law School. Sunstein has testified before congressional committees on many subjects, and he has been involved in constitution making and law reform activities in a number of nations. Yes, Cass Sunstein. So these guys use behavioral psychology to nudge people into their preferred, what the state would prefer, how the state would prefer them to act. So this is an article from the Wall Street Journal called Secondary Sources, Credit Crisis, Authoritarian Fed Nudges. And more on nudges. Writing for the Financial Times, Cass Sunstein and Richard Thaler, who wrote a book on nudging people to make better choices, look at political proposals that are backing their findings. It is not surprising that the policy teams for Barack Obama, the US Democratic presidential candidate, and David Cameron, the UK's Conservative Party leader, have shown an interest in nudge-like solutions to social problems. In dealing with the credit crisis in the US, Mr. Obama favors a policy of disclosure and transparency. His mortgage policy is designed not to preclude choices, but to ensure that consumers have a better sense of what they are getting. In dealing with environmental problems and crime, Mr. Cameron seeks to enlist the power of social norms, pricking people's consciousness to inspire them to do better. Ideas of this kind suggest the development of an approach called libertarian paternalism by the government, trying to move people in good directions without imposing penalties, mandates, or bans. No, by using psychology. By using psychology, people's minds, tricking them into doing whatever you want rather than telling them what you to do. You want. That's what nudging is. From Obama to Cameron, and this is from the Guardian newspaper in 2008. From Obama to Cameron, why do so many politicians want a piece of Richard Thaler? Tories plan weekend retreat with economics guru. Academics back right-wing means for progressive ends. So this is Aditya Chakraborty in for the Guardian, Saturday, July 12th, 2008. And it shows a picture of Richard Thaler at the top, apparently. What is the big idea of Richard Thaler, the economist quoted by David Cameron and Barack Obama? It comes down to this. You're not as smart as you think. Humans, he believes, are less rational and more influenced by peer pressure and suggestion than governments and economists reckon. Peer pressure and suggestion. Do you want people telling you what to do by using peer pressure and suggestion, or just saying it out loud? Economists assume people have brains like supercomputers that can solve anything, says Thaler, but human minds are more like really old Apple Macs with slow processing speeds and prone to frequent crashes. According to this view, voters are less Mr. Spock than Homer Simpson, and they could do with a bit of help. what Thaler terms a nudge to save more, eat more healthy, and do all the other things that they know they should. They know they should. The government knows you should, so you should know you should. Cameron is so interested in the idea that in a speech last month, he mentioned Thaler, his co-author Cass Sunstein, and even the fact that they had a new book out. Nudge. Then he summed up their argument. One of the most important influences on people's behavior is what other people do. With the right prompting, we'll change our behavior to fit in with what we see around us. It was surely the best plug to Chicago academics with a book about the obscure discipline of behavioral economics could hope for. But Tory interest in Thaler is not stopped there. When he arrived in London last week to do some teaching, 5 senior conservatives met him for more than an hour to discuss his ideas and how they might work together. Steve Hilton, the party's head of strategy and Cameron's chief ideas man, was there, as was Director of Research James O'Shaughnessy and Oliver Letwin MP, the head of the party's policy review. Plans are being made for a weekend retreat in which shadow ministers, or shadowy ministers, get together with Thaler and 2 or 3 of his associates to come up with policies. Literally going out into the woods, making policies with its guy who's going to tell him use behavioral psychology to guilt trip people or force people into doing things that they don't want to do, but you want them to do. Cameron's aides name 3 areas where Thaler may be able to help. How to make it socially unacceptable for the young to carry knives, encouraging people to recycle, and tackling binge drinking and obesity. The nudge agenda is starting to creep into Tory policy. In the same speech in which he mentioned Thaler's new book, Cameron proposed that households should be told at the bottom of their gas and electricity bill whether they were using more energy than their neighbours or less. By subtly using peer pressure, he argued, households might be encouraged into using energy more efficiently. One senior policy advisor to George Osborne made even grander claims for Thaler's influence. Behavioral economics might be our equivalent of Gordon Brown's neoclassical endogenous growth theory. The reference to the philosophy espoused by Brown early in his tenure as Chancellor is a joke, but the suggestion that the Tories are taking behavioral economics seriously is not. No, it's very interesting. This is very interesting indeed. The thing is, it doesn't only affect one side of the argument. One way Thaler ducks the political argument is describing nudge as beyond left and right. It uses right-wing means to achieve progressive ends. A third way. You see how everything has to be a third way. And of course, there's a little bit more, I think, which is speech. You go, perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Thaler's reception in this country is what it tells us about party politics. None of this territory is new to New Labour. It's just that Tories have made it a rather daring incursion into it. In 2004, Tony Blair's team put out a very well-researched paper entitled Changing Behaviour. More recently, the government has come up with nudge-style pensions that will come into force in a few years. But by seizing on nudge over the past few weeks, however incongruously it sits with Thatcher-era belief, the Tory party has rather effectively projected itself as being one with all the fresh ideas. There was a time when Labour would have been all over Thaler and Downing Street, would have pulled him in for a chat. Now it's the other side that is showing that they are open to new ideas, says former government advisor Richard Reeves. Sadly, that tells you where the intellectual energy is in British politics. Reeves is taken upon himself to organise a dinner next week with Thaler and some government advisors and think tankers from the centre. What does Thaler think of political jockeying over his ideas? He's not a Republican, is he? No Democrat, he exclaims. Wouldn't that naturally mean him a friend of Labour? Ah, but David Cameron's the one sweet talking me. And it may be the sunshine, but he appears to be winking. Yes, they're trying to attract him in. Now, they mentioned something which you can't find. This link no longer takes you to this PDF. Instead, you have to go through the Wayback Machine to find it. And it's from the Prime Minister's Strategy Unit in 2004 under Tony Blair. And it's personal responsibility and changing behavior, the state of knowledge and its implication for public policy. And this here is a completely intriguing. Keep making notes. Look, it says notes. This is an issue paper for discussion purposes, not does not represent government policy, but talks about incorporating into policy and how you should definitely incorporate it into policy. Nudging people's behavior is exactly what we want. Behaviorally based interventions can be significantly more cost effective than traditional services. They're aiming to do that already. And you see, in conclusion, the paper concludes that the efficacy of government policy may be significantly enhanced and public behavior positively influenced by the application of more sophisticated approaches to support individuals and communities in changing behaviors. To be effective and acceptable, such approaches need to be built around co-production and a sense of partnership between state, individuals, and communities. People need to think it's their idea. Cost effectiveness of alternative methods of behavioral change. All about behavioral change in this policy document, which is available within the article, of course, is linked within the article, is very detailed. It's not a policy document, is it? It's just an idea. It is increasingly accepted that the public have a central role to play in improving outcomes in public services, blah, 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 blah. This is very much policy tailored around a more unrealistic understanding of how people are, do make choices and engage in society, twinned with sustained dialogue over the implications for the citizens and states' responsibilities, should lead not only to more effective policy, but should also enable citizens to feel more in control of their own lives. And this is a policy document that looks at the same thing. It looks to change people's minds through behavioral nudging to an extent. But then Nudge came out, this book, Nudge, Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness, and made what is essentially psychological operations by the governments possible and trendy. They could get away with it. Now they could say intellectuals are saying we should do this because it's nice and kind for you. And this sort of paternalism, this liberal paternalism, is or libertarian paternalism is a little bit icky, of course, but all comes down to the same sort of thing. Looking for a third way. Anthony Giddens here, looking for a third way to do things, to nudge people and their behavior in a certain direction. And we see that Richard Thaler in 2008, when he released Nudge, that book there that we know about there, when he released that, he was doing the rounds in Edge. He is Richard Thaler next to Jimmy Wales of Wikipedia, for instance. This is Richard Thaler with another one. See, these are Richard Thaler with a lot of different people. He was the star of the show for this one. Is that Larry Page? I think it is. Um, there you go again. You see repeated characters come up in this 2008. But as you see there with Jimmy Wales and with others, Richard Thaler is the center of the party when it comes to 2008. And you can see that he was also involved in this 6 classes that would be about behavioral economics. Yes, and this is class number 1. Masterclass has 6 classes, as you can see here. The Masterclass 2008, Libertarian Paternalism, Why It's Impossible Not to Nudge. So why it's impossible not to resist nudging. And you see the people involved in the first masterclass with Daniel Hillis, Nathan Myhrvold, Daniel Kahneman, Jeff Bezos, and Sendel Manafun, of course. And the second class was improving choices with machine readable disclosure. And here we see Elon Musk is also in attendance, with Daniel Hillis, Paul Romer, Sean Parker. Now, these linked within the articles have full minutes for the meetings. So you can read everything, and there's videos attached. So you can see them having the conversations. People like Musk, it's the one way to gain the system. Thaler, let's go on. I have a response to your comment, which is you are essentially saying there is information overload. It's one way to game the system, said Musk. I disagree with that, and the reason is that the websites that I imagine emerging sort of solve that problem. So this is a in-depth conversation and review of what they're doing. And it's a very small table. Look at this. This is the second class, and look how many people are involved. Look, this is one of the master classes. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people involved, and Richard Thaler and Sendel Molnathan. And the three is this, these people who are involved include Jeff Bezos, head of Amazon, Nathan Myhrvold, head of the biggest intellectual property company in the world, Salah Kamam, or one of the biggest, Salah Kamanga, who's the head of YouTube then, Daniel Kahneman, who's the head of changing behavior and psychology at different university, Danny Hillis, Paul Romer. Paul Romer ends up being World Health Organization, isn't it? I think he's World Health Organization. Elon Musk and Sean Parker. These are the heads of all of the biggest heads of these biggest companies are all involved. All of them. And it's quite astounding, to be perfectly honest. And these master classes cannot be understated and should not be understated at all. And of course, it's not just one that Elon Musk attended. He attended a few of these master classes. Class 3 is a very interesting title indeed, if we ever get across to it. Let me see if I put it elsewhere. Oh, so class 1's here. Class 3 is down here. Class 3 is the psychology of scarcity. And this is one of the things that come up in this that's really interesting in the actual article. This is a quote by Sendil Molnathan. Listen to this. Let's put aside poverty alleviation for a second. Let's ask, is there something intrinsic to poverty that has value and that is worth studying in and of itself? One of the reasons that is the case is that purely aside from magic bullets, we need to understand, are there unifying principles under conditions of scarcity that can help us understand behavior and to craft intervention? If we feel that the conditions of scarcity evoke certain psychology, then that, not to mention pure scientific interest, will affect a vast majority of interventions. It's an important and no question. What they're saying is if people have poverty and have a psychology of scarcity, then there will be certain elements where they'll be able to control their behavior much better. Do you understand the elite making people poor so they can change their behavior and nudge their behavior better is beyond behavioral economics. It goes to something else. It's using behavioral economics at the extreme, the very extreme. It's insane. Now, Daniel Kahneman, who's mentioned there, he's in Fuller and Thaler Asset Management, so he has other connections with Richard Thaler, but he's pretty important. He's Eugene Higgs Professor of Psychology and Professor of Psychology of Public Affairs. Um, he's a really important psychologist and understands human behavior really well. Paul Romer, who was mentioned there, he's a leading economist. Like I said, I mean, he goes on and works for other people later on. Big people, of course. Salah Kamanga was head of YouTube at that time. Daniel Hillis, Applied Invention, Applied Minds. He's in a lot of these big companies, Disney even. This is very interesting. He is the winner of many awards, including Dan David Prize. The Dan David Prize, as I said earlier, was what was given to Klaus Schwab to set up the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader program while Kissinger was on the board. So these people, again, very small circle. Sean Parker, the American entrepreneur, really, really massively important figure in control, especially when he's in control of things like being in control of Spotify, Apple iTunes, Facebook. Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, as you see there, devoted himself to social network and helped negotiate financing for Facebook from PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel and the venture capital firm Accel Partners. So he had many different relationships with Peter Thiel over the years too. Very telling. Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, which Sean Parker was involved in, helped raise 280 million for Musk's Neuralink. So they're all in the same circle at this point. They're all being in business with the same guys. And Nathan Myhrvold, who I've mentioned a few full time, founded Intellectual Ventures in 2000, has led the company since to its then as its chief executive officer. Under Nathan's leadership, IV has grown from a handful of entrepreneurs into the world government invention and investment business. He is among IV's most prolific inventors, with 900 US patents awarded and several hundred patents pending. Someone told me he takes other people's patents, finds a fault in the patenting process, and semantically takes control of their patents. So that's patent theft through the back door. It's very clever, but if that's true, that's not very good. And again, we see the masterclass in 2008, The Psychology of Scarcity, and you can see there's it on video, and they're having a long conversation about these things throughout it. Very interesting. Um, how Musk gets involved with this and what he's interested in during this period. Reading the minutes of this meeting extremely these meetings in full are extremely telling. They suggest that there's a very small amount of people, maybe 8 or 9, who are deciding everything on how our future technology should be and how we should interact with it and how it should be incorporated with things that will make us make other decisions. You see, there's a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations within these worlds. And there's a lot of conversations to be had, a lot of conversations about whether or not this is right or wrong as well. Very worrying is these master classes on behavioral economics, which of course continues on. Yes, there you go. That's still it. Now, the Institute of Government website in the UK, you'll be able to find about the nudge unit. These things have already been incorporated within government. This is a snapshot from 2023. Nudge Unit. The Behavioral Insights team, popularly known as Nudge Unit, is playing a big role in helping government formulate its response to, yes, you see, I'm not going to say it out loud. Like some of the things that they do is very interesting. David Halpern, who I talk about in the NEWSHOUND about the Behavioral Insights team, is really someone who's worked on this a lot. And of course, as you see, the nudge unit was created out of nudging the theory by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. And we can see that things like, in particular, the use of disgust as an incentive to wash hands and the suggestion to sing happy birthday to ensure hands are washed for a requisite 20 seconds are some of the the ideas that the nudge unit has come up with. How nice of them. They make us disgust. They have this, we have disgust for ourselves. Now, one of the reasons why this is also important, of course, is that you're in a room with the head of YouTube, the head of Google, the head of Amazon, and the head of the future Everything app. Yes, Musk, as we can see in this New York Times article, Elon Musk, quixotic quest to turn X into an everything app. Mr. Musk, the owner of Twitter, is the latest Silicon Valley mogul to pursue the all-in-one app, the kind that has thrived in Asia but not elsewhere. He already knows they're going to do it. They're going to put in control. They've already mapped out what technology looks like, and he is involved in that. That's Musk. Musk is involved in nudging your behavior. If you want people working on psychology, two big things that happen. Again, two things, big things happening in psychology today. Again, Elon Musk, class 4. He's involved in these master classes for behavioral psychology, nudging, underhand use of information, your information. They will use your information against you to nudge you against your psychology. Now, we know that a lot of these people who are getting data sets and they make a mind map of your choices through all of the data set they got about you. And then they decide what you would, how you would both most likely best be communicated with, that will make you make the decision they want you to make. And these mind maps are from the data sets they have about you. And so Palantir is another company that has loads of data sets about you. And they will use that information to affect your psychology. That's what they do. And what this used to be called back in the day, before, before the days that we call them nudge units and the like, this used to be called covert action and clandestine activities of intelligence communities. This is very interesting. This is about covert action, and this shows you the what we're seeing, but it's out loud now. It's out loud, and you can go back in time and you can look at how spies used to work and how they used to influence you, and now they're still doing it. This because it's the age of fifth generation warfare. Here in this Grey Dynamics article about fifth generation warfare, it shows you what is 5GI. First generation was ancient melee battle, muskets. Second was organized battle with gunpowder, blitzkrieg. Third was mechanized warfare focused on speed and maneuverability, terrorism. Fourth was decentralized warfare is led by the state actors, primarily kinetic, mobile internet and network effects. And fifth, the information and perception, primarily non-kinetic. And that's where we are with non-kinetic warfare. And they know it as well. And we see here that J.D. Vance, I mean, Musk is now entering into politics alongside J.D. Vance, alongside Peter Thiel's on the outskirts there, of course. These guys are now entering, they're crossing the proverbial Rubicon, and they're entering into politics. So that third culture, the idea of scientists being able to affect social sciences, is what is happening right now on a top level. And that third culture is about replacing all, instead of giving us proper solutions to the issues that we have in our society, instead masking it using technology, of course. Peter Thiel is, of course, behind J.D. Vance as well. So they're all linked in. The eccentric billionaire patron, J.D. Vance, says he's talking about leaving the US, or this is what they always say about these things. Peter Thiel he's not a good guy. This is not a good guy. I think he's probably got serious legal issues coming up. One of his partners was found dead at some point. And Another person, of course, who involved, who I mentioned at the start, is this lady, Nicole Junkerman. And Nicole Junkerman, who I did a three-part articles on, and she heavily censored me, has loads of massive links to loads of different people, including Peter Thiel. Up here, you see Peter Thiel and Epstein and Ehud Barak. She's in Carbine 9/11 with these guys. They were involved with the track and trace stuff. She's also involved in Grok, which has been incorporated into X. And she had Swarm. Swarm, her satellite array, if we go down this article, Swarm Technology, while Elon Musk's 2020 global satellite display was promising to bring controversial 5G access across the globe, Nicole Junkerman has been investing in the budget alternative. But she sold this across to, it's now part of Starlink, and she's in return got a stake in SpaceX. So she's directly in business and has been directly in business with Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein. That's a big one. Nicole Junkerman is an important one. And of course, the second in that article, in the set of articles, was her riding on the Lolita Express with Epstein, meeting senators on the 1st of September 2002 at Les Wexner's mansion in the UK called Foxcote House to discuss probably the Wexner war in Iraq. He was writing papers alongside other people about Frank Luntz, about the war in Iraq and how to make it beneficial for Israel, a beneficial campaign for Israel. And of course, Musk, we must remember Musk's family connection is really important in this, because this is the technocrats taking control. And Joshua Haldeman was one of the first of Technocratic Inc. Back in when it was set up back in the 1930s and onwards. They did a lot of different things as well. And this is Musk's granddad. And it's a continuation of this. So this is still the high up technocrats taking control of the world. And in science we trust. This is from a CBC News article called In Science We Trust. Back in the first half of the 20th century, a group called Technocracy Incorporated wanted to reorganize society by putting scientists in charge. The movement flamed out, but its underlying message still appeals to many in Silicon Valley. And they were heavily involved. In 2019, Musk tweeted, accelerating Starship development to build the Martian technocracy. I mean, what you have to understand is that Technocracy Inc. at the start said that politicians weren't welcome, but they were looking to create radical alternatives to political situations. And that's the increase of the use of technology in to do such things. And to get there, you need to influence people, because people won't sell out humanity for technocracy without a little bit of nudging. They got to be nudged, not politicized. They can't be politicked into changing their behavior. They got to be nudged psychologically to become the technocrats in the future, because the technocrats sell out humanity. And Musk has been very involved in that from a very young age, due to being within the family. And his mother, as you see over here, is May Musk. She created the image that is Elon Musk today. She did that very carefully. There you go. That is some of the source material that you will find in Musk and Epstein, the third culture dossier. The idea that a third culture can be formed by uniting science, the different types of science, social sciences and actual formal science. The way that John Brockman saw it being able to be done would be through cybernetics, would be through finding technological solutions for the issues that are made by creating alternative systems such as third way politics, which technological and technocratic solutions can be incorporated to be able to fill the gaps that are left by the policy that normally comes from the left and the right in that case. That's why third way politics marries up really well with the third culture. And that's why these articles are part of the same series, the third series. It's the third series. It's not my third series, but it's the third series. So it's a really important, this one's been really important to go through so you can understand a little bit about behavioral economics, a little bit about how the head people, I mean, this is a conspiracy. 2008, they're conspiring in a room with 8 people in the room, 10 people in the room, funded by Jeffrey Epstein, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, these guys, funded by Jeffrey Epstein to control your mind in the future, to get inside your mind, to find a way to influence you without you knowing it's happening. And there's a soft end to the stick. The soft end is like, oh, it'll reduce your credit cards. And there's a sharp end of the stick, which is we will tell you what to do at an algorithmic level so that you automatically do things that the computer's telling you to do. And we don't even have to tell you what to do anymore. That's crazy. It's a crazy level. Behavioral economics is only a little bit about economics and a lot about psychology. That's really important to understand how behavioral economics works because they're tricking you. They're getting inside your mind. They're giving you things on your screen. You're on your Facebook, dung, 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 dung. Google, dung, 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 dung. You're on your X, dung, 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 dung. You're on Amazon, dung, 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 dung. And they're putting things inside your mind all of the time. And in 2008, they sat in a Jeffrey Epstein-funded program, and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and others decided how to make you do what they want you to do, even if it's against your best interest, by using coercion, by using the disgust, by using your social feeling that society, the people around you hate you for what you do. And it's not true. They don't hate you. They're being made to believe they do. This element of fifth generation warfare that comes out politically once we're during this time, and we're in this time now, and it's time to wake up. Because that was ages ago. That was 16 years ago they started planning how to get inside your mind. And now they've done it. Now they're in control of all of these platforms. They're in control of you. When censorship comes, was there anything recently? Was there some sort of recent thing that happened where suddenly censorship come down like it was completely and utterly constructed to down Google, down Microsoft, down YouTube, down. We will take you down one by one. We will strict access to your information. We will test on you both physically, biologically, and mentally. We will change your mind. We will nudge you into doing what we want you to do. They're the top guys. If you want to say what's a conspiracy, the top people from the top companies deciding to use your psychology against you to make you do things surreptitiously and secretly in an underhand way so that they can meet both financial and political ends. That is insane. That is insane. So for the people who are like, Elon Musk, freedom of speech. Elon Musk, freedom of speech that is put in your mouth. It's not freedom of speech. If they put things in your brain and it comes out your mouth, that's not you speaking. That's them telling you something that's making you react to something. That's them nudging you, making your behavior happen. That's not freedom of anything. That's a cage that exists to target you specifically. At the moment, I went on, as people who follow me know, I went on a protest, and it was a protest against 15-minute cities. Not a big deal. It's not a big protest. It's not like end of the world stuff. There was a little group over there, a little group over here. Everything was peaceful. People had a couple of conversations in between each other. The police everywhere, of course. But now we're in a world of AI. We're in a world of computers. We're in a world of algorithms. And what the algorithm did and spat out was stop me. Not anybody else. Everybody else get to go on about their day. But I can, individually, they know what I do. Individually, they know that I am someone who can explain to people what is going on. They know that they don't want me hanging around in protest. They don't want me to have freedom. And they're able to know that because they've got a massive data set about me from my interactions with them. So they know to get me out of the protest. So while I'm walking down with the protest and it's all on camera, they stop me right in front. Boom. The police form a line and it's only for me. Everybody else can go backwards and forwards. Everybody else is free. Everybody else can protest. As long as you do it the way they want to do it, as long as you think the way they think, you can go on about your daily life. And they'll know whether or not you're one of those people, because these people have your messages. They have your history. They know exactly what you're doing. They know exactly who you are. So they can manipulate your mind. They can change your direction. They can decide everybody else, it looks free because everybody else gets freedom, but those few there will take their freedom away. We are in a new world, a brave new world, one where only the people who need to be targeted will be targeted, and the rest will think they're not being targeted while they've already been targeted. They've already been told what to think. They've already been nudged. They get the things on their screens that tell them what to do, and they go towards doing it. They don't even realize they're being told what to do. They don't even realize that their decisions are being made for them. They don't realize. They're not human anymore. They're part of the machine. They're part of the machine. They're taking away your humanity. And that is part of the thing about these two cultures. If you want to incorporate science and technology, you take away the humanity. That is a very important part in this piece in general. If you want to have your mind, no, you've got to follow their society. And if you don't, they will target you. They will use their psychology, your psychology against you. They will use their knowledge, and they will use information against you. And the difference is with me, and I say this in the article, at the end of the article, the difference with me and fans of Elon Musk is that I've got extra information about Elon Musk that makes me make a different decision. Same thing, information. They restrict information, cajole you, push you, nudge you, make you think Elon Musk is something else because they've got information on you. And they know how to push you to be a supporter. So the difference between me and supporters of Elon Musk is Elon Musk has got information on them where I've got information on him. That's why I make a different decision. And if you could see what he's doing and what part of the world he's part of, you'd realize it's just the same old thing. Psyops galore. That's it. Remember, my friends, I need your support. NEWSPASTE is a rocking place to go. It's got loads of information. I try and explain things in a way that people can understand, and I try and go through it in grand detail so that you can and this article itself, it has loads of different sources in. It has loads of different videos in. You can go and find out much more information. It can take you 3-4 weeks to go through this article properly. And that's how I like to build my work, and I need help to do that. That's not how the press do things. What I'm doing is trying to be a better service to humanity as a journalist than what the mainstream is doing. And I think I'm doing it. So please support my work. Go to newspaste.com. You'll find the little buttons. The best way is to support me regularly on Patreon. It really is. Buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee is a great way. Ko-Fi is a great way to support me. You can help me out, and you can help me to map out this world that they're creating, to chain us, to mess with our minds, so that I can map it out for you, give you more information, and then you can no longer be nudged. You see, once you've woken up to the information, once you realize what they're doing and you realize their techniques, it does not work on you anymore. So open your eyes, get involved, help me, support me, help me help help me help you. if you're like Jay McCall, help me help you. Help me help you. But I'm serious. Help me get more information to you all, and I will continue to do this job. I'll continue to produce podcasts, videos, article after article, which explains, which will fundamentally do good for the next generation too, in helping them understand how psychology works, how this system works, how we've got to where we are, how the intelligence infrastructure work. Do it. Thank you for joining me. It's been emotional. Bye.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed